we have our application logic set up. We will go ahead and create the first function, and the first function is going to be get the player. This function, if it doesn't find the player we are looking for, it returns -1 and goes ahead and register the new player. If it finds it, then great, it retrieves the player's data and set it to the global variable right here, player. Now I want you to scroll down to the bottom. Outside the main loop, we don't put any function inside the main loop. Okay, so now outside here, go back again and look at the function prototypes, get player, and how we defined it. Okay, so get player, it was defined as int get player data. You can go ahead and copy it. Of course, I'll copy it. You can copy it or you can write it. Now scroll to the bottom, make space for yourself, and we paste it, and we give this function a body. Now before we define it, why don't we leave some comment? Okay, maybe you can say for the current UID. And what does it do? It returns -1. It returns -1 if not found. That is what this function does. Now we are going to read from a file. So first, let us create a function descriptor, and also let's create a variable to hold the UID, that is user identification, and the last variable will be the number of bytes that we want to read from the file. Now the number of bytes we will compare with the structure. Scroll to the top of your program, and as we define the structure, every player is going to have these parameters and also this method. Now to know the number of bytes we are going to read is just adding these. Okay, so we have 4 bytes for UID, 4 for credit, 4 bytes for high score, 4 for level, 100 bytes for name, and most of the time function pointers, they have size of 8. So the total size of this structure will be 100 plus 16 plus 8, that is 124. Scroll back, let's define some things. Let us get the user identification, and this is inbuilt function. So we can say get users unique. Any person who logs in, because this is a console program, will get a unique identification. Once we have the unique identification, we can go ahead and open the file. So function descriptor is equal to open, and we pass the data path or the data file. We call it data file, and if you don't know the data file, we define it on top of our program. Scroll to the top of your program, and right here we define the data file, and this is where we want to put the names of the players. You can choose any directory you want to. Just declare a macro on top here and set it to the directory you want. Go back, we pass in the data file, and we are only going to read. So read only. We are only going to open the file. Now if you know something little about reading and writing of files in C program, when the program is unsuccessful, it returns -1. Okay, we can use an if statement to check. If the FD is -1, it means it was unsuccessful, so we return -1. In our case, -1 means that the user doesn't exist. If the user does not exist, then we create a new user for him, right? If it doesn't, then the program continues. Then we can go ahead and read the number of bytes that we want. So this time we will call the inbuilt read function, and we will pass the function descriptor. Now you shouldn't forget, now the function descriptor will now point to this file, and it also has the privilege, the read only privilege. We pass in the function descriptor, which is a pointer to our file. Then we also give it the destination, okay, where we want to read the file into, more like a source template. Okay, so what we can do is that right under this, let us create an instance of our structure user and call it entry. Okay, now we pass the size of the entry. What this means is that we go into a file and we are telling it that we want to read this size of entry. What it means is that the read bytes, after reading this total size, we can compare with the read bytes. If the read bytes we get is less than the size of the entry. Now how do we know the size of the entry? We just figured it out. We combine all the parameters inside the user structure and we can make the comparison, right? A quick look is this, okay, 4 byte 4 byte 4 byte 108 bytes. That is the size. So now we will read the first entry, but because we want a specific user with a specific ID, we need to look through the entire file so that when we get a match, we can say that this is the player that we are looking for. We can just make a while loop here and we will say that while entry.uid is not equal to the UID that we are looking for, or the UA that is logged in, and read byte is greater than 0. Now when you are reading a file, this read byte function, as long as it is able to read this size, it means that the read byte will be greater than 0. If read byte is greater than 0, it means we are reading something. If read byte is less than 0, it means that probably we are at the end of the file. So while this is true, we want to keep on reading. Just read bytes. We call the read function again. We pass the entry, size of entry. Okay, we can put a comment here and say loop until user is found or the ID is found, right? This will make sure that it keeps on looping until the UID matches. Now when it's done looping, we can close the file. After closing the file, we can also check if we've come to the end of it. We can do an if statement and look at the number of bytes that we have. If the read bytes, let's say the read bytes is less than the size of entry, if this is the case, as I said, it means probably we are at the end of the file, right? And we couldn't find what we are looking for. So we will return -1. We only have one statement in there, so let us remove the curly bracket. Else in the sense that if read bytes is equal to the size of entry, then we found the user we are looking for. If we found the user that we are looking for, then we can set our global variable to the entry, right? Hooray, we found what we are looking for. And we can also print some statements onto the console. We can print a lot of stuff as well. We can even show his credit, player.credit. Then we can return 1 or 0, because according to our program, it's only when we return -1 that it sees that it wasn't successful. Now if you look at this, okay, if it's called -1, then it will register a new player. So we can return 1, which means it's successful. Yeah, we are done with the get player data function, and the next function that we are going to create will be register new player. That is in the case where this function returns -1. And which cases will it return -1? Case 1 is when the file descriptor is not able to open this data path, and also when we get to the end of the file and the read byte is less than the size of the entry. It means we got to the end and no data was found. Let's go to the next function. Function to register a new player will be simple. So first of all, let us scroll to the top and see how we forward declared it. This is the function. It's a void register new player. Once again, you can copy and you paste it right here. Void register new player. It takes no parameters. But before we do anything, as usual, maybe we can leave some comment. Now, because we are also going to access files, we can go ahead and declare the function descriptor variable. At this point, this is a new person, so we can maybe give him a warm welcome. New player registration. We will tell him to enter his name, right? Please enter your name. Then we call the input name function. We have not defined that function yet, but that is okay. We will define it right after the register new player. Now, after getting the player's name, the rest of the parameters, we give them default values. So we can set the player.uid. We can set the high score to be the same as the credits, right? Let's give it 100. And also the level. Now, what I was thinking when I added the level is every time a player wins a game, his level increases, right? So if you win 3 games, then probably you go to level 3. You start at level 0. Once we have given these default parameters, the next thing is to save it into our file. We go open. The first will be our data file. Now this time, because we are going to write, we need to pass more privileges to this function. So first we will pass this RW. We are going to read or create or append, and also let's add these privileges. The user be able to write, read, and also execute. If FD returns -1, it means there was a problem. We can use our if statement to check if fd is equal to -1, at this point a fatal error occurred. We are going to call fatal. Now this fatal function is what we define in the hacking header. When the message is passed into the fatal function, it creates, let's say, a private variable here, and it adds fatal error to it, then it adds your message, which means that if, let's say, you pass an error message of something happened, it comes here and output will be fatal error plus something happened. Very simple. Let's come here and we will pass in a message. If no error occurs, then we can write all the data that we have given to the user. We create the player data and we go and save it to the file. FD, a pointer to our source where we are reading it from, right? And the size that we want to read, size of struct user. Okay, then we can go ahead and close our file. When we get to this point, it looks like we are successful. Then we can welcome the user to the game of chance. By the way, credit to this game goes to the book titled The Art of Exploitation. If you guys have time, you can take a look. It really goes deep behind the scenes of C programming, and maybe we can tell him some of the things you have. Yeah, I think this is good enough. Now the function we need to create next is input name. Yeah, right here, input name. So come here and void input name. What this function will do is that it will just allow the user to enter his or her name, save the name to the player object. The player is a global variable, so it can be accessed anywhere. Let us add a comment here. What we can do is we can just create a pointer to a name, right? We can say a name pointer, and also we can create an input character. Initially we set it to line break like this. We will say, wow, this input character is equal to the line break. We are going to read the input of the user. We do scanf here because this is a character, and we will pass our input character. We are going to point the name pointer to the address of the player's name. This is the global variable, but basically this name is what we are talking about. Convert that into a character pointer and we get the address of player.name. Maybe we can leave a comment. Now once name pointer is pointing to the address, it means whatever we do to this will take effect right there. We do a while loop, and this time while the input character is not equal to this, the reference name pointer, and we will set it to the first character that was read. Then we need to read the other characters. The user's name might be long, right? Read the character, put it input character, and we will just increase name pointer ++. So every time we go through the loop, we are setting the name pointer to the character that is read. After we've done that, we will read the next character. At the end of this, the player's name will be set to whatever the user types in. Once we are done with this, we can set it to 0, which is we are just terminating it. Basically, this will be the end of the input name function. Now that the input name function is completed, let us create the function to update the player's data. Now scroll to the top, and we already forward declared it here, update player data. So let us give it a body, void update player data. So when you win or lose, we call this particular function to update the info. Now because we will be accessing file, let's go ahead and create the file descriptor, and also we are interested in the read UID. That is the UID that we will be looking for. Now when we are updating file of a particular user, we are interested in the identification of that user. So we go through the file and we only search for the identification. If we scroll to the top of our program to the definition of a user struct, it starts with UID. So what we can do is that we go into the file, then we read the UID. Now the UID is an int, so it's 4 bytes. Okay, so we have our player's UID, then we read that UID and compare. If that is what we are looking for, we found it. The rest of the data we are not really interested in. We loop through quickly, then we get to the next UID, then we will read. Let's put it in code. Go back to the function. Let us create this bend byte. We will use this variable to loop through the other data that we don't need. We are only interested in finding the user identification that matches, but the rest of the file we will just walk through just like that. So now we can call our function descriptor, open, and we pass the data file. We want to read and also write, so let's pass the rdwr to it to give us that privilege, and we know that if the file descriptor returns -1, an error occurred, so we call the fatal function. Now we define the fatal function inside the hacking header file right here. We define it here. Maybe we tell it where the error occurred. Now if the file descriptor returns a positive integer, that is if it is not equal to -1, then probably it was able to open the file. So in that case, then we can read the first UID. The first 4 byte will also be the UID. Once we've read this, we will try and compare this UID to the player's UID. If it is the same, then we found what we are looking for. If it is not the same, then we keep on looping. While this read UID is not equal to player.UID, it means we've not found what we are looking for. Then we can go through the rest of the parameters. We don't need them. But this time, don't forget that we have already read the first parameter of the struct, which is the UID. So we need to subtract 4 from this. Then we will do E++. We pass the file descriptor, and this time we will use the burn byte. Should be the address instead. By the end of looping through the rest of the struct, we can read again the UID of the next struct. I hope this makes sense. What we are doing is that we are going to the file, and the file contains users, and each user has these parameters. Right now we want to update a particular user. We go into the file, we read the UID. Now the UID is 4 bytes. So after reading the UID, we are not interested in the rest. So what we do is that we will just loop through without saving anything. Once we come to the end of this, it will be also the beginning of the next user. All right, scroll down. So that is exactly what we are doing here. Right here, we read the first UID inside the file. Once it's not what we are looking for, then we go ahead and we will burn through the others parameter of that struct. We don't need it. At the end, we are starting a new user. We read that one too until we find the user we are looking for. By the time we come here, we are sure we already have what we are looking for. We can use the write inbuilt function, and we use the function descriptor as usual. Name is 100 characters, so 100 bytes. Close the file. Let's leave a comment here. This will be all for updating the player data. So the next function that we can write, showing high score. Void show high score. As usual, let us leave a comment. This function will show the highest score available. All right.